Hi, I'm April at Farmer John's, and I'm going to be talking about basic landscape design tips. First thing you want to do is pick the right plant for the right spot. So you want to make sure that you know what type of light exposure, sun, part shade or shade, soil type, and drainage issues. If you'd like more information on that, you can check out our blog on farmerjohnsgreenhouse.com. Once you figure out what type of exposure and drainage you have, then you can go on to the fun part of design. That's the most important thing, is to have fun. Pick out things that you like. There's some basic design principles that you can use. The first would be unity. So you want to repeat different elements throughout the landscape design so that it pulls it all together. Some of these things that can create unity is texture, color, and also the lines of your bed. Curvy, nice flowing lines are going to be a more informal type of design. Straight, right angles is going to be more of a formal, structured look. If you have a cottage garden, you're going to want to use those more informal lines. If you have a very symmetrical house, you might want to use more formal, straight lines. When you're looking at color and texture, there's a lot of different options as far as plant materials. This is a type of Japanese maple, Rhode Island red, and you can see this has a medium texture to it and a nice red foliage. Pairing that with, this is a gold mop, Camasiferous. Pairing that with this yellow and then the red, you have a nice contrast. You also have a nice contrast in texture. This is a medium texture. This is a fine texture. This Japanese maple, which is a Crimson Queen, this Japanese maple has a very fine textured foliage, still has the red, but you would want to contrast that with something more of a coarser texture. So you have the yellow in this hosta, but the leaves are much coarser. So you get a nice contrast of texture and color. And then you're going to want to repeat these things throughout your landscape. Yellow or blue or some contrasting colors have like 3 pops of that color throughout the landscape so that you can draw your eye through it. In landscape design, green is considered neutral. And then you can use a warm color palette like these with yellows and reds, or you can use a cool color palette with blues and pinks that have a cool tone to them. And then you're going to use those pops of contrast to pull your eye through the landscape. So when you're using color in your landscape, I do prefer to use a lot of foliage color because it lasts all season, and if it's an evergreen through the winter, flowers, especially trees, shrubs, and perennials, have a set time that they bloom, so you're not going to have that flower color there all season. Another landscape design element that you would like to consider is harmony. So harmony is a little trickier because it's using groups of plantings to work well together. If you have too many different things, it can be chaotic. So you do want to repeat elements so that there's a cohesive feel to the design. You can do that by repeating different types of plantings. It doesn't even have to be the same planting, but just making sure that you're consistent with your colors and textures. Also, I like to use odd numbers for groupings of plants. So 1s, 3s, 5s. For sure, in the front of your landscaping, you want to use a significant amount of evergreens. I would recommend at least 30% evergreen so that in Michigan, obviously, we lose a lot of leaves. Focal points in the landscape are important. You want to use them minimally, and you want to use them appropriately. A focal point is going to draw your attention to a certain aspect. The last 2 points I want to talk about are balance and proportion. Balance is either asymmetrical balance or symmetrical balance. Most of the time, you will use an asymmetrical balance unless you're doing a very formal landscape. So with a formal landscape, you have the same pattern repeated on both sides of a center. With asymmetrical balance, you're going to have equal proportion of visual weight, but you're not going to have the same thing on each side. For proportion, you don't want something that is extremely tall and then you go down to something that is extremely low. You want some in-between sizes so that you're not going from one extreme to another. So 3/4 rule. So you want the highest element in your design to be, the next thing should be about 3/4 of the highest element. So you can see you have Japanese maple here, and then you go down to the height of the hydrangea. And then next you can do a smaller planting like this creeping phlox. So you don't want to go, you can see the proportion is off if you just went from this Japanese maple down to the creeping phlox. You need an intermediate height here. Again, my name is April at Farmer John's. If you have any further questions or needs with your landscape design, please come visit us here at Farmer John's.